Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with atbbq.com, and this is caramel bread pudding. Today I'm bringing you guys another one of those great fall desserts. It's bread pudding, and this one's got some great stuff in it like caramel, it's got some cranberries, some white chocolate, very tasty. It all starts off with the brioche bread though. So what I have here is some brioche baguettes. Is about 28 ounces of bread to start with, but I've left it out overnight, so it's kind of got this crust on the outside, but it's still pretty soft where it was sitting on the sheet pan. Now, the reason that we do this is because we want this to have a little bit of texture so it just doesn't turn into mush when we put our custard on top of it. But I also want a really great tasting tender bread, so we're gonna get the benefits of both. We've got this really buttery brioche, one of my favorite sweet breads. Not even super sweet, but it's perfect in sweet applications. And we've got that little bit of crust on there that's going to help it hold its shape. So let me give you guys a little game plan here so you understand what we're doing as we're doing it. We're gonna take some of that bread, we're gonna layer it into a big cast iron skillet, a 12-inch lodge. We're gonna layer in some of the flavorings, and then we're going to do another layer. And we're gonna do that until it's filled up, and we're gonna soak all of that stuff in this really nice, sweet bourbon custard. We're gonna mash it all down together, and we're gonna give it some time to really soak all that stuff in. I mean, it's gotta sit for about half an hour or so before we can move on. So before we can get to any of that, we gotta make the custard. So this starts off with 1 cup of whole milk. We're gonna add to that 2 eggs. So this is essentially where you get your custard from. Anytime you're cooking milk or cream thickened with eggs, you've got a custard. We're gonna add to that about 1/4 cup of white sugar, sweeten things up. Just a tablespoon of bourbon. Gives a little bit of a vanilla kick to it, and a little sprinkle of smoked salt. So let's just give this a good whisk now. Make sure we break up those eggs and start to dissolve the sugar. All right, I'm gonna set that aside and start to build the bread pudding. All right, so I've got a couple tablespoons of butter here. You want it softened a little bit, it's easier to work with that way. We're just gonna coat this pan with the butter. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so we're gonna start off with about half of our brioche. Layer that in there. And then we start to sprinkle in, let's say about 1/4 cup white chocolate chips here. We've got a 1/2 cup total. A couple tablespoons of these salted caramel chips. We got a couple tablespoons of these sweetened, dried out cranberries. Nice little flavor pop in here. And then how about just a dusting of cinnamon over that? We got a tablespoon total of this cinnamon. We'll split it in half. Now I'm gonna add about half of this custard in now so we can kind of mash this down and get even more into the second layer. Just kind of pushing everything together. Let that custard soak into the bread. All right, let's do it again. We got the brioche. We've got the white chocolate chips. We've got the salted caramel chips. And the dried cranberries. Dusting with the cinnamon, finish off that tablespoon. And then right in there with the custard. All right, now like I said, we need to give this some time for that custard to kind of soak into everything. So I'm gonna let this sit for about half an hour. We're baking the bread pudding on the Yoder Smoker's YS640 pellet grill today. We're running it at 350 degrees with an indirect setup. All right, so I'm just gonna throw this guy here on the second shelf, and we're gonna start off cooking this covered so we get that custard set, the eggs and everything cooked, and then we'll uncover it to get a little bit of browning. It's been about 25 minutes. I'm gonna pull the lid off of the skillet and turn the grill up to 400 now. We don't have any liquid moving around, which is a good thing. So that custard's starting to set. Now we're gonna look to get some color on the top. Well, the bread pudding's been on for about 55 minutes total now, and I'm gonna pull it off around that 1 hour mark, but in the meantime, I'm gonna put together a very simple caramel sauce. So we're gonna start by melting a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. And like I said, we're keeping this really simple, so we're just gonna be using a can of the dulce de leche, milk-based caramel. You can find this in the baking aisle, and this will save you a little time, keep you from cooking down that sugar and probably scorching it. You know how it goes. So as you can see, this stuff is really thick, which is why we're going to be putting some butter in there. It's gonna help thin it out, and here in a little bit of bourbon as well. Now, if you do want to make your caramel from scratch, I've got a really great recipe for it, and I'll throw it in the video description for those of you who want to try it out. All right, so we just let that simmer away for a couple of minutes. I'm gonna turn the heat off now. You can see that butter's a little bit separated, so we're just gonna whisk this together. And now I wanna add about a 1/4 cup of bourbon. Well, I do love the smell of caramel and bourbon together. And you can see how we've thinned this out now. So the plan here, pour this over the bread pudding and just let it soak right into that bread. I'm just gonna turn the heat back on, just low, and let it gently simmer down for a couple of minutes while we go pull the bread pudding off the grill. So we've got some good browning on top here. I can see that it's soft underneath though, and everything is set up. There's nothing running around. So that's what we're looking for. About 1 hour, set the custard, get a little color on top. Well, it's time to bring these two things together and finish off the bread pudding. Just let that lava-like caramel sauce cascade over the crunchy terrain of the bread pudding. Now there's some amazing aromas coming off of here, all that caramel and cinnamon, but you gotta wait just a little bit longer. I mean, you could dive in now, but you'd probably lose some skin and taste buds and it'd be a mess. Just let it soak in, let it cool down. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Woo! That's a king-size portion right there. Check out that beautiful crust on the bottom. It's not scorched, it's just got a good crust. You could top that off with a dollop of bourbon whipped cream and a light little dusting of cinnamon on top. Beautiful. All right, I'm coming in for the taste. Oh man. Caramel, cinnamon. It's like creamy and doughy from that custard, the way it soaks into the bread, but we've still got plenty of texture and crunch from the top. Whipped cream is a really good idea on there too. That back and forth between the creaminess of the whipped cream and the richness of the bread pudding, all very nice together. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out atbbq.com for the products featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the recipe, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to thesauce.atbbq.com. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.